people know what the fuck they got to do now.
All right, so part 2, how to build a supplement company. We left off with differentiator, having your brand together. All that sounds great, John. But what do I do now?
Raise money.
Yeah.
Just like any business, guys, you have to raise money. And the tough part about a supplement company is unless you have found your distributor, right? Or, I'm sorry, your manufacturer, it's hard for you to cost out your capital needs. Sure, you have to spend money on brand development, right? That's very important. You have to spend money on a website. That's very important. You have to spend money on labor. That's very important. But ultimately, the majority of your investment is going to be into your product. So if you do not have a manufacturer, I would recommend, and Cory could speak on this in more depth, identifying the number of products, we refer to them as SKUs, the number of products you want to launch your business with.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think that is where I got stuck at the first time around. Was thought I knew the brand, thought I even knew the categories, and then I was like, money, manufacturer, and that was like a huge problem. I think with the internet, I think you start to search what's local to you or close by. My whole thing was, what could I drive to? You know what I mean? That and that's how that process kind of started. I think that people get lost in, to your point, John, let's use $10,000 for an example, right? You're going to need a lot more than 10 grand, by the way. A lot more. But let's say you have 10,000, the percentage of what they spend for branding and product is probably a really big problem for a lot of people. I think they might spend it all on, or marketing, all on product and marketing and not that much on branding. We spent like 20%, right, of ours on just the brand. And then about the other 70 really probably on product.
Yeah.
Is that about accurate?
Yeah, and I think it's important to note that in this business or in any business, whatever amount of capital you think you need, we always say the rule of thumb is double it or triple it, because you're always going to need more when you launch. And because this episode is focused on capital requirements, after you, let's say, launch with 5 products, right? Let's say you're going to launch with 5 products. You're going to launch your supplement company. Then you have to decide how you're going to package those products, okay? Packaging isn't free. Packaging costs money. Printing on the packaging costs money. Are you going to shrink wrap it? Are you going to use see-through bottles? Are you going to use glass? All these things have to be costed out, and then you have to go and cost out the printing of the brand.
So basically, when you're costing out all of these things, I think that what happened is a lot of people don't think of how much all that shit costs, John. Yeah. Because plates, you love plates. This is a great example, right? So you say, all right, this jug of protein costs X, and I'm going to put this awesome shrink wrap on it. And then they're like, just to set up the shrink wraps, the plates are $7,000. Right. And you're like, whoa! Like when you're on a budget, like you get blown out with these costs, and you're like, fuck.
Exactly. So he's talking about plates and this was something,
printing press.
Right. That was new to me. So when we went to develop our labels and we're talking to the printers who are going to print the shrink wrap, they said, okay, there's a plate charge for each color. So remember this. If you're going to use shrink wrap, each color on your wrapper requires a plate. Each plate typically costs $500 bucks. So if your label has 8 colors, that's $4,000. Now, that's $4,000 for your pre-workout. If your post-workout looks different, it's got 10 colors, that's $5,000 in plates for your post-workout. And you do the math on the other products. So these are things that make you think strategically. Think about it like this. Okay, if we unify our colors, max effort muscle, gray lines, orange guy, we're not going to be paying all these huge fees because they're titled differently. And yes, there is a different color for the flavor circle, but we're not coloring everything completely different. When we do that, we save money. And as a startup, you have to count every dollar because there's something called a burn rate. A burn rate is how fast you burn through your startup capital. And if you're not watching every dollar, if you're throwing $5,000 at plates here, $3,000 at plates here, before you know it, you put out 5 products, you hired people, you got labels, you have a brand, you have a website, and you got $3,000 left. Well, what if you don't make money your first 2 months? I'll answer that question for you. You either got to go borrow more money, or you're out of business.
Yep.
Think.
Well, here's I'll give you guys a good takeaway on this. So on our labels at Max Up for Muscle, originally we had mocked the Twitter logo to be blue, the Snapchat logo to be yellow, and the Facebook one to be the other color blue. And so basically you're looking at, that was an extra, I think they're like $400 a piece. That's an extra $1,200 per label times the 5 SKUs plus different flavors. And so, you could be in at like 7, 8 products deep. Well, we made them all orange. No big deal. No one cares. You know what I mean? So there's things that like that, attention to detail, just understanding the burn rate and the overhead and things like that all make a big difference. So I think this is a good spot to kind of stop at, John, because to digest it's not just like, hey, I created a post-workout and now it's boom, boom, boom. It's like you have to, all these factors go in. It costs you way more than you think.
Yeah, I completely agree. And the one thing I would close with, because we are talking about money, is your gross margin. And as we close on money, when you create products, let's say you create a protein or a pre-workout, you have to create it based on if you're going to go to retail, which means if you make the product for $10, okay, and it sells for $40, okay, GNC, for example, is going to need to buy that product from you for $20. That means you are going to make $10 on the margin. Now, if you have all these plate fees, the labor fees, the website fees, they all go into that blended margin. You may end up making $2 a product. Yeah. Now, if you're going to go direct to consumer like us and you spend $10, you have a much bigger margin. So when you're developing products, you have to take into account what are my margins and then what are my sales channels. That's how you can figure out how you will make money and how much time it will take to recoup your initial investment.
All right. Look for part 3 coming up soon. Peace.